Hello everyone, I'm Tina Shaw.
And I'm Russ Reese. Here's some breaking news right now as former Savannah Chatham Police Chief Willie Lovett faces a federal judge for sentencing.
News 3's Andrew Davis has been on this story for more than a year now. He is joining us from the federal courthouse in downtown Savannah with the latest. Andrew?
Well, after a relatively contentious debate for the last half hour, the judge has come down with his sentence. It is a total of 90 months in prison for Willie Lovett. That involves the counts 5 and 6 were the extortion charges for 90 months. The other 4, which were conspiracy for illegal gambling and the lying to federal authorities, also 60 months. Those will run at the exact same time. So it's 90 months in federal prison for Willie Lovett. He's also been told to pay a $50,000 fine for what he's done, $3,000 of that immediately, and then money monthly from there for the next 47 months by the time he's done. Basically, Judge Moore said simply that he was the defendant. He extorted cash on a regular basis from these people and that he misused his law enforcement position for his own personal gain. He's at the top end of what he had there. He could have gotten up to 97 months, as low as 78 months by the time. Judge Moore felt that it was important to make a statement about the fact a law enforcement person misused his own position. Now, the government at various times said simply enough that he could have stopped at any point, especially when he was chief, because he was already making enough money. He chose to keep going and keep misusing his position. His uniform, he said, was just a costume at that point, is what the government was saying, that it was no longer a uniform. He was no longer a law enforcement position. Now, Willie Lovett has 1 month to go ahead and surrender. That would be March 10th at 2 o'clock right now to surrender to authorities. I have talked to his defense attorneys who say they plan to try to go ahead and appeal that within the next 14 days, which they have the right to. If that's said, they would like to also keep him out of jail for that entire time on that appeal, which could take as many as 2 years. So once again, Willie Lovett, 90 months in jail. When he got that sentence, he had no emotion. His family, also sitting in the stands, had no emotion. There weren't a lot of people there. It was mostly FBI officials, U.S. attorney officials, a couple from the city, but no major city leaders, no mayor, no council people or anything of the sort. This was Willie Lovett and his family mostly understanding and taking this sentence. We've got a lot more, including hopefully to get reaction from Lovett or Lovett's lawyers or anyone else involved at this point. Russ and Tina, this is a very serious sentence for what they consider a very serious charge for Judge Moore, and it should be very interesting to see what happens next, including whether that appeal will be heard.
All right, and basically this boils down to the police chief taking bribes to overlook a gambling operation that was going on. To recap it, 90 months though. 90
months, a $50,000 fine. Andrew telling us he must pay $3,000 of that immediately. And of course, this case has rocked and often divided the community here. News 3's crime expert Jerry Long is joining us now. She's a former major with the Savannah Chatham Police Department. And we want to get your perspective, Jerry. By all accounts, of course, this situation has scarred the Savannah Chatham Police Department.
It's been tough for everybody. It's always tough when a law enforcement officer basically violates their oath and does something contrary to what the pure ethic of the job is, and that's to help the community. This is going against what a good law enforcement officer stands for.
And I guess it always leaves those questions about who else might have been involved, and it's not necessarily fairly, but it tarnishes the good work that is being done by men and women of the department.
It does considerable harm to the community as it's reflected regionally and nationally. It does considerable harm to the department and the men and women who really value their job and the job that they do for this community.
Of course, Jerry, throughout the last year, we've heard of low morale in the department and officers even leaving the force. Does this sentence handed down by Judge Moore today mean a step forward for Savannah Chatham?
It's a beginning. It is a closure in some senses, as we were talking a little earlier, that now the department can begin to move forward, hopefully that the individuals that were involved are no longer there, and that there's a new day, and that's what everybody hopes for.
All right, Jerry, we appreciate your perspective. We want to give you a little background on this case now.
Today, myself and County Manager Russ Abold accepted the retirement notice effective immediately of Savannah Chatham Metropolitan Police Chief Willie Lovett.
That was September 27, 2013, the day Willie Lovett resigned as chief of Savannah Chatham Metro Police. After that, the complaints began to flood in. more than a dozen current and former SCMPD officers threatening to sue the city, saying there was a, quote, culture of corruption inside the department led by the former chief.
If you were a law enforcement officer who's interested in seeing the rule of law upheld, you could either put aside those morals and continue to serve within the department, or you could find employment somewhere else.
Then in June, the bombshell. Federal authorities indict Willie Lovett on a variety of charges, including 5 counts of extortion, conspiracy to conceal illegal gambling, and lying to federal authorities.
It's a sad day for the Savannah Chatham Metropolitan Police Department to see your former leader be indicted by the federal government.
The charges are linked to 3 men and 1 carnival operation. Randall Roach and Randall Roach Sr., as well as Kenny Blunt, all claim they paid Lovett to keep officers away from their illegal traveling gambling operation, a dice game called Razzle Dazzle. All 3 men eventually pled guilty to various charges, and Randall Roach Sr. agrees to testify against Lovett. November 2014, the trial begins. A series of Savannah officers take the stand. Terry Ryan said the former chief was known for retribution for officers who did something he didn't like. And in 2004, he witnessed Lovett pulling back an undercover officer's money from the gambling table himself, saying they are closed. The FBI details 518 phone conversations between Roach and Lovett, and video shows Lovett making multiple stops at their booth, Randall Roach putting his hands in his car. Federal authorities say Roach was making a payoff to Lovett, and on 2 different occasions, FBI cameras catch Lovett with money in his hand at the carnival site. When the prosecution rested, the defense took over. Their one and only witness, Willie Lovett himself. Lovett took the stand and said simply he did nothing wrong. Lovett told the jury he never collected any protection money. He never did anything to protect the roadside gambling operation and never knew that illegal gambling was going on. As for the claim Lovett pulled money off Red Roach's gambling table, he said it never happened, and the officer that saw something like that would never be on his force. After almost 2 full days of deliberations, the jury came back with guilty verdicts on 6 of 9 counts. Lovett walked from that courtroom without a word.
All right, we want to go back out to Andrew Davis now. He has more about what the judge had to say when he sentenced Willie Lovett today to 90 months in prison. Andrew?
Well, that's right, guys. So far, Judge Moore was very specific with what he did with the actual sentencing. Once again, 7 years, 6 months. But he said afterward, Sheila Parker was in the courtroom while I came down here to talk to you. Judge Moore then admonished Willie Lovett. He called it a loss of public trust and a sad day in the history of this county and this city. He said to Willie Lovett, I don't know, Mr. Lovett, you made a decision to dishonor your name, your badge, and your department you worked for. We don't know why you did that, but now we have to live with that decision. So once again, 7 years, 6 months, and a $50,000 fine for Willie Lovett. He has to report to prison right now as of March 10th. The judge clearly was angry and upset with what happened and decided to put him on the high end of this sentencing for what he did with this illegal gambling operation, the extortion, the payments he got, and everything else connected with it. You can take a look right now. There's a big crew of everyone, and right there are some of the family members and people. Alicia Blakely also out there, including some of Willie's family members who are speaking. Willie Lovett has not made it up the stairs yet. He, of course, will be coming down. We will attempt to talk to him and see if he's got anything to say about this very strong decision, the fact that he apparently is headed to federal prison for as many as 90 months. And remember, federal prison is a situation where there is not probation involved by the time you're done, so he will serve every bit of that term and not be out anytime soon. I also wanted to tell you he's got 3 years of supervised probation even after he gets out. Willie Lovett, of course, 65 years old, so the odds of him serving the entire sentence and being on probation afterwards are not great, but it's also possible. We're going to find out a lot more as we go along and try to get some reactions from the big players in this. Russ and Tina, it is a sad day for the community, and, you know, very interesting to see exactly what the judge had to say and what Willie Lovett may have to say later on. Back to you.
All right, Andrew. Yes, we will continue to follow this story on WSAV.com, WSAV's Facebook page, and also on Twitter. And we will have much more coming up for you tonight on WSAV's First News at 5.
Thanks for joining us. We're going to send you back to regular programming now.